What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Video Creator Show, where we talk about all things YouTube. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about different YouTube channels that we either love or find fascinating that we wanted to share with you so that you can either learn something from them or who knows, maybe even you find your next favorite YouTuber in today's episode. And that's the goal of today, is to really kind of just fascinate you with these really cool channels and just different topics about YouTube. So I'm really excited for this one today. My name's Augie. I'm here with my co-host Grant, and let's go ahead and get right into today's episode.
Let's do it.
All right, so the first YouTube channel I'm going to talk about today is actually the Joe Rogan YouTube channel, or the Joe Rogan podcast, right? So if you listen to these episodes that me and Grant are putting out, we talk about a certain YouTuber quite often, and that's CoffeeZilla, or at least I do. I bring him up almost every episode.
Definitely recently, yes.
Yeah, so here's why I'm bringing it up, because quick background, CoffeeZilla, he is the internet detective. If you try to run a scam online, he's going to call you out and create a video about it. He created one recently. Yeah, he's going to get you, man, and it's going to be bad. And he recently made a video about Logan Paul for a crypto scam, or allegedly a crypto scam. And so that came out, and come to find out, I'm watching these other videos. Logan Paul's dream is to go on to Joe Rogan someday. He's never been on the Joe Rogan podcast. Now, what happened in this last week, and I don't know if you heard of this, Grant, but CoffeeZilla actually was invited and went on the Joe Rogan podcast and basically beat Logan to it and got to kind of spill all the beans on a ton of different scams and stuff, and just kind of his whole story too. Did you see that happen?
I did, yeah. I listened to the whole episode, actually.
The whole entire audio version?
Yeah, audio, video. I kind of just like left it on in the background, and so it's not like I retained the whole 3 hours, but I listened to it, and I know exactly what you're talking about. CoffeeZilla usurping Logan Paul. It's pretty juicy, but I don't want to steal your thunder here. Keep it going.
Yeah, so I guess my next question is, do you think that happened for a reason? Was that a shot that Joe Rogan was taking at Logan Paul because he's had to have heard that he wants to go on the show, or do you think it was just a coincidence?
I think it was a coincidence. My understanding of Joe Rogan, and I've listened to a lot of episodes, is he isn't super calculating. I think he just has people on that he finds interesting. And like I don't think Joe Rogan was listening to Impulsive and was like, oh, this Logan Paul guy wants to be on my show, maybe. And then CoffeeZilla breaks with this video, and then he's like, oh, what'd be funny if I had the guy who exposed Logan Paul on before Logan Paul. I feel like Joe Rogan doesn't really operate like that. I think it just sort of happened, but cosmically it is hilarious, and it's some karma, I suppose.
Yeah, it's crazy too, because CoffeeZilla, I think at this point is over 2 million subs, and I mean, I've watched that guy go from zero. Honestly, zero. The first time he ever popped up in my feed was an old school one, way before the green screen. In not a great home studio. And I've just kind of followed along. I guess that's why I talk about him so much. He's now, look at him, Joe Rogan. He's on the Joe Rogan show. I want to say it's been like a 2 year. He's been making videos longer than 2 years, but these last 2 years is just taken off. So there's a little inspiration for those of you out there who feel like you're not going to make it. What he did is he changed his format a little bit, kind of became a character, and started making these really epic green screen videos where he has animated backgrounds. We've spoken about this before, but that's CoffeeZilla. I love that style of animated backgrounds. I'll ask you again, I think I asked in the previous one, you ever seen anybody else use that, Grant?
Not really. It's usually like a very basic green screen. It's not a CGI background like he has, the $10 million studio. His is very intricate, and it's unique for sure.
Yeah, so if you guys want to know a little bit more about what we're talking about, is he shoots all his stuff in front of a green screen with multicam. So he's got different angles. And then instead of just doing a green screen background, he actually has a computer generated, I guess you could say, a CAD design or something. And not only is it just, a background, but it's also animated so that the ceiling fan is spinning. There's TVs on in the background. And he's actually whoever he uses to create these has created like a whole world with these designs.
Yes.
And so yeah, sometimes you'll see shots of him standing at the top of a skyscraper, like the top level, looking out the window over a big city. It's really cool stuff. And I'm sure, well, I don't know if I'm sure if most people have heard it or not, but you know.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think what's important to note is his general theme. It's kind of like a noir, old school theme, you know, guy in suspenders and a button down. When he doesn't know what to do or he's confused about something, he'll go to the bar and then talk to the bartender, and the bartender's a robot. But kind of all of this, I think, it adds a lot, but is also peripheral, right? So the main thing that got him big, obviously, is kind of the meat of his content, which is exposing scammers and being a detective, you know, a YouTube detective who goes around and essentially works for the little guy. You know, he is bringing justice to people who got scammed out of money or who were duped in some way, and pretty much all of his videos talk about this. I mean, he had a recent video about the Silicon Valley bank collapse, which was really interesting. And so kind of everything he does is sort of in that vein. He's definitely tangential, adjacent to, involved with the finance scene, the crypto scene, and usually the sort of scams or shady dealings that go on around them. So he's become an expert in this space, and all of the style and the backgrounds that we've talked about. I think, you know, I think he found his space and his formula. And then once he had that, that's when he invested in the quote-unquote $10 million studio. And that's, I think, a good way to do it, you know, sort of finding what actually works. And then once you find it, then you kind of add this layer where it really does add depth. And I think it's really powerful.
Yeah, you're right. It's all about the content first, but he's been able to add that extra layer, which has been really cool. Made it really, really good. I think he upped the standard. But that's CoffeeZilla, you guys. And I do agree with you, Grant. I don't think Joe Rogan did anything maliciously, because it seems like he always tries his best to be respectful, because he has some guests on there that are just kind of like way left field, way out there sometimes. And Joe Rogan, for the most part, is pretty respectful. So I don't think he would do something like that. But with that said, I want to bring up the next creator, the next channel, Biaheza. Biaheza. I'm pretty sure it's Biaheza. It's kind of an odd name, but it's actually his name. I think it's maybe a Middle Eastern name. But he creates videos about, you know, this is obviously up my alley. This is stuff that's on my homepage, right? Dropshipping, which is like, you know, e-commerce, selling online. You know, he makes kind of like challenge e-commerce type videos, how to grow, you know, on YouTube, how to grow following, you know, stuff like that, online business. He's a young guy, really young guy. And the reason I'm bringing him up, and if you haven't seen any of his stuff, you should check it out. He does a really good job. And he just released a video that is titled Quitting the YouTube Hamster Wheel. Okay, so I was like, okay, this is interesting. You know, this is another creator kind of quitting, although, you know, no one ever quits because they still, you know, but he's going to basically go from, you know, uploading twice a week or once a week to probably like once a month or once every 2 months. Kind of the same thing that you did, Grant. You know,
I get it.
Once you become the OG, once you're kind of OG on there, he's just, I guess, stepping away a little bit. But I just want to talk about the reasons. I wrote them down that he mentioned in his video, and I just want to bounce those off you, Grant. Get your reaction to those, and also for our listeners, you could get another glimpse. We talk about, you know, burnout and that kind of stuff. It's a reoccurring topic in this whole video creator world industry, right? It's one of the main topics. So I think it's interesting to go into the mind of somebody who's doing it successfully. He's got 1.28 million subscribers, so over 1 million subscribers. He gets like 4 or 5 million views a month. And, you know, this is kind of in the finance, you know, online business space, so probably gets pretty good ad revenue there and other ways to monetize. But here's the first reason that he said that. And kind of the overarching theme is that he's just kind of sick of making videos for the algorithm, right? That's kind of the overarching theme. But here's the first reason. Making viewer attention grabbing content to keep, and trying to keep people watching is at this point makes him sick. It makes him sick to watch it. When he when he watches YouTube, he says he watches YouTube all the time, like all of us do. And anytime he sees a video where he sees a tactic being used by a creator that he knows is being used to keep the viewer watching longer, he just clicks off of it. He can't stand to watch it. It makes him cringe. And so creating that, he knows he has to do that in his videos. And I relate to this a little bit. This is one of my blockers. I always talk about how I'm an overthinker. That blocks me from creating.
Yes.
But now that I'm thinking about this is kind of it too. Like I know it's part of overthinking. I know I need to kind of do these things, and they do kind of make me cringe. So what's your reaction to that reason for quitting?
Hey there. You probably know the Video Creator Show is brought to you by vidchops.com. What is vidchops.com? Well, it is an editing service that will take the horrible burden of editing off your back. We all know video editing. It's tedious. It takes forever. But what if you had a professional who did it for you? You go to sleep, you wake up, it's done. Wouldn't that be magical? vidchops.com. Hire a professional, save yourself time and energy, and take your YouTube channel to the next level. I think it's a perfectly valid reason. I can totally relate to it. I have a lot of blocks as well, because there is a pressure to do retention demon editing. And I think in order to get away from it, you sometimes do just have to take a break. And I mean, you're laughing at the retention demon because it's a funny phrase. I heard it on a podcast.
I never heard that.
And it's so true though. There is like a sort of demonic vibe to it in a way, where every 5 seconds at least you're doing a new cut. There's like this kind of fake way of talking, like, we filled an entire swimming pool with marbles, and this is what happened. And, you know, the text is like flying up on the screen. That sort of thing, I think, is the current YouTube meta. And for me, I see this. So what is his name again?
Biaheza.
Biaheza. I see Biaheza as somebody who is going through a crisis right now, an existential YouTube crisis, where the meta is horrible. He's probably burnt out. He's just tired of seeing what he's seeing. And my hope is that he will have a sort of retention arc, a return, a glorious return, where he's kind of healed, figured out the style he wants to go for. And it will hopefully help change the YouTube game, because I think this sort of Mr. Beast retention demon style of content is starting to get old. There's something about it that is beginning to get stale and kind of worn out. And I think YouTube has always had these sorts of eras, and this is just another passing of an era. And I think Biaheza, he's just sort of experiencing that on an individual level. So I think ultimately this is a good thing. And when I say retention demon, I like Mr. Beast. I'm not necessarily hating on this type of editing. I enjoy Mr. Beast's videos. But I think with this guy in particular, when you're making the videos, it is kind of another level of like disgust, of being burned out with it, because you have seen behind the curtain. And when you see behind the curtain, I think it's easier to get jaded than if you're just kind of a viewer. If you get tired of it, you can kind of just stop watching it. It doesn't like seep into your bones,
Yeah. When you want to make a video, let's just say how to make $1,000 drop shipping for this guy, right? How to make $1,000 drop shipping. And you think to yourself as the creator, okay, to make this video, I could do A, B, or C. Or I could do X, Y, Z, and that's going to get way more views. I really don't want to do X, Y, and Z, man. That is embarrassing. That's going to take a lot of time and money, and just, it's going to be cringy and embarrassing. I don't want my friends to see that. But you just know you have to do X, Y, and Z for the algorithm, then yeah, that hurts, and doing that over and over again, I can see that. I think I want to also say one more thing too about that. You mentioned the era. Like, you think this is just kind of like almost like a trend right now in the era. And that's a whole interesting topic in general too, because I do remember the era of challenge videos of giant gummy bear, giant cinnamon challenge, baking
Yep.
this, and those were smash the like button. Like there was that era. That was that era. Like those challenge videos were. That's when that became a trend. Smash the like button, abuse the like button, and um, and so yeah, maybe you're right, Grant, that this era will also pass.
Yeah, I think it's only natural. I think it's a good thing overall that times change, and I think everybody. So that thing you said, in order to succeed, you have to do X, Y, Z. I think in any industry, in any era, people have said that, and then there's always people who find a way to be true to themselves in a style that is really great, that ends up kind of breaking the mold and defining a new era. And that always has happened since the beginning of time. So I think that phrase of like, you have to do X, Y, and Z, it's never really true. I
Hmm.
think you can. I think it's easier to get noticed if you're sort of following trends. It's easier to be accepted. It's easier to not be seen as like cringe or to be misunderstood because you're always kind of utilizing the trends of the hour, right? But if you do something that's really unique, I think you risk being misunderstood. You risk being labeled as I just cringe or stupid or yeah, it's more risky, but I think risk takers always end up defining new eras, and that is really important.
Yeah, definitely. That's what it's all about too, is differentiating yourself. I think in this day, like that's more important than following the trend. So, all right, let's go to the next one. So the next one is he doesn't want to make videos over and over again that are the exact same videos just with different titles. Can you relate to that?
Yes, I mean, like for me with Treesicle, it was kind of finding some mystery in a game and then kind of solving it. Like, why did Golden Freddy do this? Why did Springtrap do that? So in that sense, it was kind of following the same formula. It was like the same video with different titles. There were different videos, but they also weren't. So I think what ends up happening with a lot of YouTubers is they find something that works, and they don't want to deviate too far from it. So you do kind of end up making just copycat videos of yourself, because it's here's the thing: making something novel and that you've never made before, it takes a lot of extra time, and it's very hard to predict how long it's going to take because you might end up spending a day working on something and then being like, I don't like it, and then you just scrap it. But if you're trying to release a video every week or however often, you can't be doing something that's too unique because you can't predict how long it's going to take because there's too many weird roads. So yes, I can relate to that.
Got you. Yeah. I think that's kind of the thing that gets most YouTubers is you got to niche down. You got to niche down. You get into your niche, and then 300 videos later, you got to create the same content. It happens to so many people, and that's when you got to reinvent yourself, right? And I've been thinking about this too for my basketball training channel. It's time to get back after it, but be the coach, not the trainer, not the player. Be the coach now, and share my wisdom there. I think I would enjoy that a lot because I'm really into coaching right now, and I think it'll be a way for me to reinvent myself.
Right on.
Anyways, little side note there. All right, so next reason. When it comes to making money, he would rather spend his time focusing on other ways to make money other than being a YouTuber, because in the end, being a YouTuber is basically giving yourself a job, right? So he says, okay, if I'm doing this YouTube thing to make money, I'd rather do something else with that time and make my money in other places because YouTube is just a job. It doesn't end, right? Every week, new video, So, what are your thoughts on that?
Totally relate. I mean, I had to find other ways to make money in order to heal, I guess, because YouTube did become a job. and it really sucks to feel like every week you have to make something creative, or even that you're locked down. It's like you kind of lose either way, right? If you're making something cutting edge creative every week, then you're going to be exhausted. If you're making something that is too cookie cutter, that you've made a million times, then you're going to be bored and exhausted in a different way. So yeah, finding other ways to make money for me, like freelancing, doing this podcast, all that stuff has been really helpful for me, and arguably my creativity. I mean, I feel like I'm sort of like over the last 3 years, essentially, I've been recharging my batteries. And yeah, when YouTube is a job, it can be awesome, but it can also be draining in a way that is kind of hard to understand unless you have kind of been in show business or something like it before.
Yeah, and year one is exciting, year two is exciting, but eventually it's not going to be as exciting. If you get into year six, year five, who knows? You're not going to be the same person you were at year one. So it's not as exciting to create videos at that point. 8 videos a month used to be easy. 8 videos a month now is a lot because you've just kind of exercised all your creativity and stuff. So the last thing I wanted to kind of bring up is, and I'll get your reaction on this, is he says that being a YouTuber is like a reverse pyramid, meaning that when you're the CEO of the company or the owner of a business, right, you're at the top of the pyramid and you're delegating everything below you. But when you're a YouTuber, it's upside down. You're still the founder and you're the CEO, but you're at the bottom now, and everyone's kind of delegating to you. They need you to make the video. Most YouTubers are just one person shows anyways. So 99% of people are doing everything. So that was just another thing that he said he didn't like it as a business model, which we're talking a lot about the grind. I still believe in you to be creating content for your business and all that kind of stuff. So don't get this twisted at all. But we're just kind of giving like the year 5, right? If you're able to get to year 5 of consistency, like you're going to go through a tough time, right? Mm-hmm. From what we've seen in our personal journeys as well, both of us. So anyways, that's a little side note as well. But what's your reaction?
I guess so. The reverse pyramid, I feel like it depends how you structure your YouTube channel. I think a lot of times that can be true. It seems like the way he has set things up, his channel is structured like a reverse pyramid where he is kind of being delegated to. He's wearing like 1,000 hats, and it's exhausting for him. Whereas I feel like ideally, and he might, again, this I think is involved with reinventing yourself. It's not just about style, it's also about the business end. Like, how do you structure your business? He might need to figure out a new way to make videos where he kind of films something and then he shoots it to an editor and then he hires somebody to find him brand deals, and they kind of take care of that. Like, he might just be delegating in a way that, has worked for this long, but he needs to maybe step back from certain things and let go and kind of trust other people to run parts of his channel, parts of his company. So I don't think it has to be like that. The reverse pyramid graphic's really funny there. I think it's easier for that to happen with YouTube than maybe any other company. But I don't think it has to happen like that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, in our VidChops, right, we're part of that solution where we try to help you kind of put a team around you where, with us, you can actually we can edit your videos, thumbnails, and upload it to YouTube, do the title, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, for a guy like that, if he is, from my guess, he's doing it all himself, is my guess, because I don't know. I'm just guessing that. And so, yeah. Anyways, that's part of the solution.
I will say it, with a channel like his where this is one thing I've kind of been struggling with too, of like, okay, even like if and when I make my glorious return, if a YouTube channel does well and it starts taking off and you're the personality of it, then everything kind of has to be run through your taste, right? Like, if you aren't giving notes on something, like unless you have an editor that is amazing, which you might, but ultimately everything kind of has to get run through your taste. So if you let it go too much, that could be hard. So this is, I think, why a lot of people start podcasts, because it's a lot easier to just kind of talk and then let somebody edit it, or to not edit it at all. Whereas if you're making these videos that are kind of complex and there's a new idea every time, it's almost like every time you have to go in and give a billion notes, and, you know, that might be okay, but you have to be intimately involved with every step. Whereas a podcast, you can kind of just like talk into a microphone, and then it's like easier to mass produce, I guess. You know, they're just not, a podcast is not as customized, and something that is highly customized requires somebody with good taste to kind of clean up all the edges. So
Totally.
I get it.
Yeah, and like for a guy like that, if he was to have an editor and a thumbnail designer and all that stuff, like you said, he still has to review it and do all that. So there's that part. But okay, still could save time. But yeah, I mean, it's just, you got to find someone that fits, right? Mm-hmm. So the last thing I wanted to bring up is not a channel, but kind of just wanted to get your reaction on this. And it's just something that's been on my mind for a while and kind of been driving me crazy. And I just wish there was a solution. And I don't know if you're like this, but I love looking at Social Blade. I love bringing up channels on Social Blade, punching in their username on there, seeing what they're doing. But recently I've been a little bit down, because when you look at somebody's views, now you have no idea if they're short views on YouTube Shorts or if they are long form views. And so it's pretty much irrelevant now, because it's not irrelevant, but it's not going to drill down, and it should tell you. You know, I wonder, have you noticed that, first of all?
Absolutely. I mean, even looking at YouTube analytics, it's like you can separate them, but it's still kind of a pain. But yeah, Social Blade, they have not figured that out yet. And I think just in general, short views are not worth nearly as much as long views. So I do think it's a problem. I think the ecosystem, the platform, I mean, Social Blade, they're all still kind of adjusting to shorts. They're still pretty new. So I agree. It's a problem, and I do hope it gets solved. It's hard to tell how well somebody is actually doing, you know?
Yep, and I don't know if it's YouTube would need to add something to their API, which is kind of like their language that people can use to tap into their analytics. But it's definitely something that needs to happen. And I'm guessing, so YouTube's adding podcasts too now, right? Like we've talked about that before. Like, what are those views? Like, it's kind of like a whole new conversation of like, just not all of the views are the same, because there's just different types of content, you know? Mm-hmm. And it's going to get to the point where, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. I don't know what conclusion I'm trying to make out of all this, but I just think that a 60-minute podcast view where somebody watches all the way through, I guess they're just going to hit a bunch of mid-roll ads as they go through there. I was just going to say they need to, see more ads or be worth more money to YouTube, which should, generate to the creator, right? And I guess it would, right? If you're using more mid-roll ads, there's more impressions, more ad impressions. Any thoughts on the different view types?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the landscape is changing. You're right. I feel, as far as the view types, a normal video is obviously, like, one view on a normal long video is worth significantly more, at least 10 times more than a short view. I would argue a podcast view is probably worth more than a normal video view. Just because it's harder to get people to listen to a podcast. Like, podcasts, they tend to grow slowly. You have to be really consistent with it. You might end up having an exponential takeoff after doing it for a while. But generally speaking, I think podcasts are very valuable, but they are very competitive. So if you can get somebody to listen to your podcast, I would argue that is more valuable than a normal video view, because I don't know, usually there's like less of a filter between you and the viewer. So in that sense, I think it creates more of a what's the word? Like more of, I don't want to say relationship with the viewer, but
Parasocial.
yeah, it's like they get to know you a bit better. Like you're not getting filtered through this highly edited video.
Right.
It's just you talking. So in that sense, you end up creating super fans with podcasts. So I think podcasts are probably the most valuable, perhaps in no small part because they are harder to grow and because the filter between you and the viewer is less.
And the watch time possibility normally
Yes.
is way longer. You know, like if
Yes.
someone goes 60 minutes, that's pretty good. Yeah, I was just, you know, and kind of in preparing for today's podcast, I was just like looking at my homepage and just swiping down and like, man, like I would say 90% of the videos on my homepage are like 20 minutes or more. You know, and I do listen and watch podcasts a lot, I guess, on YouTube, but I was just like, wow, like that's different than 10 years ago. You know, like they really all like 18 minutes, 25 minutes, 32 minutes, hour 20, you know. I was like, geez. So anyways, just kind of something to keep in mind as, you know, we all know that it's kind of the trend, or it's kind of like what the algorithm wants is these longer videos now. Anyways, okay. Did you want to bring up one topic for me to react to? I think that now would be a good time, maybe.
Yeah. Let's do that. I don't think we've talked about him before. I feel like we mentioned him. But his channel is called Caleb Hammer. He has a podcast where he essentially interviews people about their personal finances and gives them advice, roasts them.
I love this guy.
I do feel like we have briefly talked about him, but I don't think we've featured him or anything. Let me do Caleb Hammer. Here we go. So yeah, he is just
crushing.
So I mean, his thumbnails are hilarious. You know, dropping out of college to make no money. You can see the thumbnail here.
Yep.
There's like fire and somebody looking disappointed, and he looks exasperated. And then yeah, like immature child is mooching off her mom to survive, and you know, it's like very harsh with the marketing, but it's also really funny, and I think people know what they're getting into when they get on this guy's show. And it's literally just him. I mean, I can click on a video here. So, you know, the guest introduces themselves a little bit. It's a financial audit. So they kind of give their background. So the first part is this person talking about themselves dropping out of college, and then dealing with chronic illness, and then, you know, him giving some advice on how this person can move forward in life, kind of talking about what they do for a living. And so it's really interesting. This isn't something I would ever think I would want to watch, but I've listened to so many episodes now. Because you would think a financial audit, I mean, holy fuck, that sounds boring. But it's really fascinating. Especially, I mean, Caleb is very to the point. He doesn't mince words. He is really straightforward with these people. About their spending habits, about their lifestyle habits. And on top of that, all of this is really important. I mean, good financial hygiene, if you want to call it that. I mean, it's the difference between being able to retire and not. It's the difference between potentially being homeless and not. You know, it's, if you don't have good finances, then you're kind of living on the edge. So I do feel like this podcast is a good influence. It's on a topic that you would think would be really boring. So I think for me, like the main takeaway from this channel is that you can kind of take anything and make it interesting if you are actually, like, if you have something unique to bring to the table. You know, in Caleb's case, he is good at kind of roasting people in a way that is fair. He obviously knows a lot about like finances and being like how to be responsible with them. Etc. So yeah, I mean, Augie, you've clearly watched some of Caleb's videos. Like, what are your thoughts on him?
Everything you said, I think, was pretty spot on. I think the main thing here is that his content is entertaining because of the fact that he doesn't hold any punches, right? If he was, oh, I agree. Like, first of all, it's kind of a taboo subject, right? Finances, personal finances, getting to know what these guys are spending and stuff. So that's interesting. And then also the fact that he has, his reactions will be straight to the point. And so, the way that I actually found out about this guy, and I haven't watched too many of his YouTube channel videos, but his short form I have watched a lot of. And that's how I found out about him, was through short form. I think it was TikTok. It might have been, it was not Instagram Reels, because this is not kind of Instagram Reel vibe to me. But it could have been YouTube Shorts as well. But I started watching all his videos on his, it must have been TikTok. And yeah, he's funny. And I think if you want to learn from him, it's a good show format, right? We talk about, different formats of shows. That's a good format to do, almost like a podcast type interview. It's an in-person interview where he's interviewing. I guess he probably has 2 cameras. I'm pretty sure it's multi-cam, maybe even 3 cameras to do like a wide shot too. And then what is your niche? So you're like, for us in this podcast, we could bring YouTubers on and we could be like, what is your camera gear? Oh, I use this, and be like, what are you doing? Are you serious? You're using your phone in the year 2023. You could have a mirrorless camera. What's your budget? $10,000 a month I could spend. Oh, you got plenty of money. It's almost like you're being the dad. That's kind of his MO. Like, I'm the dad. You're telling me what you're spending. I'm giving you advice. So I'm helping you. Like, I'm helping this YouTuber, but I'm doing it in a way that's kind of funny. And so there's the format, right? What's your niche? Do that exact same format with that kind of personality, and that's going to most likely create some entertaining content.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really interesting how much he was able to bring to the table with something that kind of already exists. I mean, obviously, like, a multicam podcast has been done many times before, but somehow he's been able to find something that a lot of people are dealing with. I think most people, they are struggling to not spend so much money every month, especially nowadays. I mean, with inflation. And I mean, I look at my credit card bill every month and I'm like, oh my God, how did I spend this much money? I guess I went out to eat too much, but like, was it really that much? And so this podcast is really interesting, and it kind of tapped into something that I didn't know I needed. And I do think, like, even that thought of looking at my credit card bill every month, if I was more like Caleb Hammer, I could have turned that feeling into a show, which is essentially what he did. So I think, yeah, the takeaway here, or one of the takeaways, is that if you have something that is sort of exasperating in your life, like, other people are probably dealing with it, and you could potentially create a show out of it if you can figure out how to talk about it, how to market it. And I think it's inspiring, it's fun, and it tells me that we're not all so different, you and I.
Yep, exactly. And yeah, I just think that he's almost like reinvented Graham Stephan to me, right? He's like a little bit better Graham Stephan as far as the personality goes, and it's because of the straightforwardness, maybe. So, anyways, I think it's great. I think that was a great channel to bring up, and if we brought up his Social Blade, I'm sure he is taking off right now. But the problem will be is you won't be able to tell if they're short views or long form views.
Right.
Yeah. So, anyways, no. Hey, Social Blade, if you're listening to this, there's probably aren't, but if there was any way someone wants to tag them and retweet this episode, then we would greatly appreciate it. We're going to go ahead and wrap this one up. I want to remind everybody that this episode is brought to you by vidchops.com. VidChops allows you to add an expert video editor to your team in just a few clicks, so you never have to edit again. Head over to vidchops.com to take your YouTube channel to the next level. All right. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Later.